Tonight, we drift back to the mid-2000s when the internet still felt a little quieter and the glow of a laptop could fill a room like a small fireplace. You could hear the world outside, the faint traffic, the hush of an air conditioner, and then the brighter sound of a web page loading line by line, as if the screen were breathing in. Video lived in odd places then, tucked inside bulky files, trapped on camcorders and early phones, hard to send, harder to play, and often too heavy for the slow patience of an email attachment. A clip might demand the right player, the right format, the right patience. And if you tried to stream it, you often watched a little spinning icon more than the moving picture you came for. People shared photos easily enough, and words flowed through message boards and blogs, but motion still felt like something the web hadn't quite learned to carry. And yet, you could sense the hunger for it, the way friends leaned in when a tiny video did work, the way a joke became funnier when you could actually see the grin that delivered it. In Northern California, 3 friends who had crossed paths at PayPal kept noticing the same friction in everyday life, the simple wish to share a moment and the awkwardness of actually doing it. Chad Hurley thought in clean design and simple buttons. Steve Chen carried the instincts of an engineer, and Jawed Karim had the restless curiosity of someone who notices what's missing before others do. They weren't trying to build a grand media empire, not at first, just a small bridge between people, a place where a video could be uploaded once and then watched anywhere without special software or complicated steps. In a modest early workspace, often described as being above everyday street life, they sketched out something that felt more like a utility than a spectacle. In February 2005, they registered a new domain name, short, friendly, and easy to remember, as if it had always been waiting in the background of the web. A few months later, as spring warmed into early summer, a basic version of the site quietly appeared, and the idea at its heart was almost disarmingly plain. Click, upload, share a link, and let the clip travel on its own, moving from one curious mind to another, like a note passed gently across a classroom. Back then, channel still mostly meant television, and broadcast still sounded like something only studios could do, but the air was changing, and the world didn't quite know it yet. So tonight, we begin in that soft moment before the leap, when a small tool is built for a small need, and the future is already humming inside it. In those first weeks, the site was simple, almost shy. A white page, a small search box, and a promise that felt strangely generous for its time. Instead of asking you to be an expert, it assumed you were human, with something small to show, a birthday candle, a street musician, a dog tilting its head, a skyline at dusk. There were small signs of early internet culture, star ratings, comments that ranged from kind to chaotic, and a sense that this was a living room with the front door propped open. Behind the calm surface, the team worked on quiet miracles that make sharing feel effortless, converting messy files into something a browser could understand, smoothing the edges so a video would play the same for strangers in different places. The player felt like a breakthrough because it let you press play and simply watch without downloading a file and hoping the right program would cooperate. It was not artful at first, just functional, and that was the point, because the beauty would come from what people chose to upload. On April 23, 2005, Jawed Karim posted a short clip that didn't try to impress anyone, and because of that, it still feels like a doorway you can step through. The video was called Me at the Zoo, only 19 seconds long, and it showed him standing by elephants at the San Diego Zoo, speaking casually about their long trunks. No studio lights, no polished script, only a steady hand and a voice that sounded like a friend talking to you in line, and in that ordinary tone, you can already hear the future. It was the kind of moment that used to live inside a family camcorder tape, private and almost invisible, and now it sat on a public page, waiting to be clicked. Around it, early uploads began to gather, some playful, some awkward, some heartfelt, and many simply curious experiments, as people tested what it meant to have a stage without asking permission. Most clips were short because the web still moved slowly and because small pieces of time were easier to carry. You could embed a video on a blog or paste a link into a message, and suddenly a clip leapt across the web without needing to be mailed, burned onto a disk, or carried in a pocket. MySpace pages and forum threads started to sprout little video windows, and the moving image began slipping into conversations that used to be made of text alone. A new habit formed quietly, the habit of searching for a moment instead of a title, of typing in a feeling or a question, and letting the results surprise you. In that gentle way, the site began teaching the world a new kind of literacy, not only reading and writing, but watching, uploading, and sharing. And as more people discovered that the door was open, the hallway behind it grew longer, leading onward into rooms filled with laughter, music, and the first hints of something viral. As 2005 leaned into 2006, YouTube began to feel less like a single website and more like a new kind of weather, a steady front of shared moments moving across the world. A clip could be filmed in a bedroom, uploaded in the afternoon, and by evening it might be playing inside hundreds of tiny windows on blogs, posted again and again like a story everyone wanted to tell. One early lesson arrived through the simplest kind of surprise, the way a commercial could outgrow television when it was set free online. In late 2005, a Nike video featuring the Brazilian footballer Ronaldinho became one of the first YouTube clips to cross 1 million views, as people replayed skill and joy the way you replay a favorite song. Around that time, pieces of television began slipping onto the platform too, not always with permission, but with undeniable momentum. In December 2005, an SNL sketch called Lazy Sunday was uploaded by users and spread quickly, pulling millions of viewers into the idea that the internet could do what broadcasters did, only faster, and without waiting for a schedule. The sudden popularity of those clips also revealed the tension hiding under the surface, because the internet moved with curiosity, while media rights moved with contracts. Even as some videos were taken down, new ones appeared, and the larger pattern remained. People wanted to watch what they wanted, when they wanted, and they wanted to share it instantly. By mid-2006, the numbers started sounding like a different language, and by July, the pace had become startling. Roughly 65,000 new videos uploaded each day, and around 100 million views rolling through daily. Search and simple tags helped the tide organize itself. But much of the discovery still felt like wandering, clicking from one suggestion to the next, guided by instinct more than logic. Behind the scenes, servers strained and bandwidth bills grew heavy, because each play button pressed somewhere in the world was a small request for electricity and data to keep flowing. And yet the experience for the viewer stayed gentle. Click and watch. A soft buffer, a short wait, and then the moment arrives. Moving, speaking, laughing. This was also the season when the word viral began to settle into everyday speech, not as something clinical, but as a way of describing attention, how it spreads when people pass delight from hand to hand. You could feel the culture changing in real time, because instead of asking what was on, you began asking what you had missed. And in that shift, YouTube quietly became a new kind of gathering place, where the world's smallest moments could sit beside its loudest ones, and where the next era was already lining up at the door. By the autumn of 2006, YouTube had become too large to be ignored, and too alive to be easily controlled. It was a place where a home video could become a headline, and where a late-night comedy sketch could travel farther online than it ever had on television. But growth has its own weight, and the platform carried heavy questions. Who owned a clip once it was uploaded? Who paid for all that streaming? And how a young company could survive the costs of its own success. Somewhere in server rooms, fans whirred and lights blinked through the night, because every view was a small promise to deliver the same moment again for anyone who clicked. The founders had built something people loved, and now they needed the kind of support that only a giant could provide. More infrastructure, more legal muscle, and a clearer path to earning enough to keep the lights on. Google was watching closely, because Google understood search, and it could sense that video would soon become one of the main languages of the Internet. Google even had its own video service at the time, but it lacked the easy pull of YouTube's community, the simple upload flow, the fast sharing, the feeling that the site belonged to the crowd. To Google, YouTube was not just entertainment, it was an index of human curiosity, a living archive of what people wanted to see, learn, laugh at, and share. On October 9th, 2006, the news arrived gently at first, and then all at once. Google would buy YouTube for about $1.65 billion, paid in stock. For many people, the number felt unreal. A price tag attached to a website filled with skateboard clips, family jokes, and grainy music videos. But the logic was simple. Attention had moved, and the future was following it. The deal closed soon after, in November 2006, and with that, a small startup became part of a much larger machine, without losing the feeling that anyone could still press upload. YouTube adopted the phrase, broadcast yourself, and the words mattered, because they turned a quiet behavior into a public invitation. In the years that followed, the platform expanded its reach, adding languages, opening access around the world, and building the capacity to carry more and more moving stories without breaking. At the same time, the tug of war over rights became more visible because traditional media wanted protection, while viewers wanted freedom, and YouTube had to learn to live between those desires. In a calm way, the acquisition marked a pivot, not away from the original idea, but into a larger phase of it, where sharing was no longer a hobby, but a foundation stone of modern media. And as the dust settled, a new question began to glow softly in the background. If everyone can broadcast, what happens to television, to music, to fame, and to the ordinary life in between? Once YouTube had Google's backing, the platform began to feel steadier, like a bridge reinforced after a sudden surge of footsteps. The videos kept coming, but now the site could carry them more reliably, and the world grew used to the idea that any moment, no matter how small, could be uploaded and found. Cameras were shrinking, phones were learning to record, webcams were becoming common, and the distance between a thought and a published video began to feel shorter than ever. People started returning to the same creators, not because a network told them to, but because a voice felt familiar, and familiarity is one of the quiet comforts of modern life. A teenager with a cheap microphone could post a song cover, and strangers might leave comments that sounded like applause, and that applause could be heard across oceans. Someone who loved fixing things could film hands tightening a screw, replacing a part, explaining patiently, and suddenly the internet became a workshop where anyone could learn. YouTube began adding the gentle scaffolding of community, subscriptions, playlists, and suggestions that nudged you from one clip to the next, like following a lantern down a path. For most users, early videos were also shaped by practical limits, often around 10 minutes per upload, which encouraged stories to be told in small, digestible chapters. In 2007, a new door opened for creators, the YouTube Partner Program, which allowed some channels to share in advertising revenue, turning uploads into a potential livelihood. It didn't make everyone famous, and it didn't make everyone rich, but it changed the meaning of the word creator, because now an ordinary person could imagine building something lasting from a camera and an idea. This was the early outline of what we now call the creator economy. But in those days, it still felt like a handful of people experimenting, posting weekly, replying to comments, learning what their audience loved. Meanwhile, traditional media began to shift its posture from dismissal to curiosity, from takedowns and tension to official channels and licensed clips because the audience was clearly here. The old logic of entertainment, prime time, gatekeepers, polished schedules began to loosen as viewers chose short clips during lunch, deep dives late at night, and music videos whenever a mood arrived. YouTube didn't replace television overnight. It simply offered a second horizon, one that was personal, searchable, and endlessly refreshed. And as that horizon widened, it began to reshape the habits of an entire planet, preparing the way for new platforms, new formats, and new kinds of fame that could rise from the quietest room. In the years right after the acquisition, the platform kept the same soft promise, and yet everything around it began to speed up. You could feel it in the way videos loaded more smoothly, in the way the player behaved with less hesitation, as if the internet itself had learned to exhale. At first, the most famous clips were often almost accidental, little pieces of home life that would have disappeared into a family hard drive in another era. A child's giggle, a surprise bite, a harmless prank, a small dance in a kitchen, and suddenly the world was replaying the same few seconds together. In 2007, a short family video of two brothers, one of them a baby with a mischievous grin, spread so far that it became a shared memory of early YouTube, familiar even to people who had never met the family. That same year, the site's growth became a pattern you could measure in habits. People checking for new uploads the way earlier generations checked a favorite TV show. The word subscribe took on a new meaning, not a magazine or a cable bundle, but a quiet pledge to return to a person's voice. Vloggers began speaking directly to the lens, and it felt intimate, like a late-night call with someone you trust, even if thousands of others were listening too. And because the comments were right there beneath the video, the audience was no longer silent, but responsive, sometimes kind, sometimes messy, always present. For creators, that feedback was both mirror and compass, helping them sense what landed softly and what drifted past without leaving a trace. Meanwhile, the technical side kept evolving in the background as YouTube moved from low, grainy uploads toward clearer pictures, then toward high definition as cameras improved and bandwidth became less precious. With each upgrade, the world gained a richer archive of itself, not only headlines and polished performances, but ordinary afternoons, family jokes, and learning moments recorded and saved. You might see a clip embedded on a blog next to a personal story or tucked into a forum thread, and it would feel like someone had pinned a moving postcard to the page. The boundary between the internet and real life began to blur, because now the internet carried faces, voices, accents, and the small music of different rooms. Even the act of searching changed, because you weren't only looking for information anymore, you were looking for presence, for a voice that could explain, comfort, or simply keep you company. As the library grew, another reality drifted in like a slow tide. Much of what people loved to upload had been made by someone else. A favorite song, a TV sketch, a sports highlight, a movie scene that felt unforgettable. And suddenly millions were watching it outside the walls of its original home. For the entertainment industry, this felt at first like a door left open in a storm, because clips could be copied and shared faster than lawyers could write letters. For YouTube, it was a question of survival, because a platform built on sharing needed a way to respect ownership without shutting down the joy that had made it bloom. So YouTube began building tools that worked quietly in the background, less like a courtroom and more like a kind of pattern recognition. Instead of searching by title, the system could listen and look for fingerprints, tiny signatures in audio and video that matched files registered by rights holders. In 2007, YouTube began rolling out what would become Content ID, a system that could automatically identify copyrighted material inside uploads and then apply rules chosen by the owner. Sometimes the rule was removal. The clip disappears, the link goes dark, and the moment is returned to private space. Sometimes the rule was to leave it up, but track it and place advertising on it, which meant the content could keep traveling while money flowed back to the right holder. And sometimes the rule was to let it live freely, because even big companies learned that sharing can also be marketing a new kind of discovery. This shift mattered because it turned conflict into a workable routine, and it helped YouTube move from a wild scrapbook into a place where major studios and labels could participate. Official channels began to appear, music videos posted in clean, high quality, late-night shows releasing clips the morning after, news segments uploaded with titles designed for search. For the viewer, it felt seamless. The same play button, the same comment box, the same simple act of leaning in. For the media world, it was a recalibration, because control was no longer only about owning distribution. It was about meeting the audience where they already were. And as those professional libraries arrived, they didn't push the amateurs out. They sat beside them so a polished music video could appear next to a teenager's cover song, and both could gather their own loyal circles, each shaping culture in a different way. As more videos arrived, the hardest problem became the quietest one. How do you help someone find what they didn't know they were looking for? In the early days, discovery was simple. Popularity lists, fresh uploads, search results that rewarded clicks, and whatever a friend happened to send. But with millions of new clips pouring in, the platform needed a different kind of guidance, something that could listen to your attention the way a good host listens to a guest. So YouTube's recommendation system grew into a soft engine of suggestion, watching what you finished, what you abandoned, what you replayed, and what you saved for later. If you lingered on a piano tutorial, it learned to offer more music. If you watched a long documentary late at night, it learned that you sometimes prefer slower stories over quick jokes. Over time, the system began to treat watch time as a kind of signal, not only what you clicked, but what you stayed with, what held you gently in place. In the early 2010s, YouTube described changes that rewarded videos that kept viewers engaged, a move away from pure clicks and toward the calmer truth of time. It changed the feel of the platform because creators began thinking in longer arcs, not just a punchline, but a whole walk through an idea. It also made the rabbit hole a common experience. One video leading to another, then another, until the outside world felt far away and the screen became its own small night sky. Autoplay, playlists, and the steady flow of suggestions could feel comforting, like an endless radio station made of moving pictures. And yet that comfort came with responsibility, because recommendations shape what people see, and what people see shapes what people believe is normal, important, or true. So YouTube kept adjusting its systems, trying to reduce the pull of low-quality bait, listening to feedback, measuring satisfaction, and quietly rebalancing the scales. For the viewer, most of this happened invisibly. A softer set of choices on the side of the screen, a new thumbnail offered like a gentle invitation. But for the culture as a whole, the change was profound. YouTube wasn't only a place where videos lived, it was a place where attention was guided, where the next idea arrived not through a TV scheduler, but through a personalized stream shaped by your own nights and days. In the beginning, people uploaded for the simplest reasons: to share, to laugh, to remember, to be seen for a moment by someone far away. But once the audience became real, something else slowly appeared: the possibility that making videos could become work. In 2007, YouTube introduced the Partner Program, inviting eligible creators to share in advertising revenue, so that a popular channel could earn money as its videos played. It was a quiet change with loud consequences, because it turned attention into income, and income into time. Time to plan, to edit, to improve, to show up consistently. A webcam hobby began to look like a career path. People learned to speak in series, to build running jokes, to create recurring segments, and to think not only about a single clip, but about an audience that returns. With that audience came new tools, analytics that showed where viewers paused, where they left, which countries were watching, and how a title changed the fate of a video. Creators began refining their craft the way broadcasters once did, but in bedrooms and small studios with simple lights and second-hand microphones. Networks formed too, groups that offered production support and sponsorship connections, helping small channels feel less alone. Brands took notice, because YouTube wasn't just a billboard, it was a relationship built through repetition and trust. So sponsorships, memberships, and merchandise became part of the ecosystem, widening the ways a creator could sustain their work beyond ads alone. The work also came with uncertainty, because income could rise and fall with changes in advertising, policy, and the shifting moods of an algorithm. Creators learned to diversify, to protect their craft by building other income streams and a presence across more than one platform. Even so, the central idea held that a person with a camera could build a living by helping strangers feel, learn, or smile before sleep. As YouTube matured, it began collecting genres the way a city collects neighborhoods, each with its own rhythms and familiar faces. There were comedians who treated the camera like a stage partner, gamers who narrated adventures through glowing worlds, and beauty creators who taught the quiet artistry of color and light. There were also teachers. Some sat at desks with simple whiteboards, explaining algebra, history, or science in patient steps, making the internet feel like a school that never closes. Others taught cooking, carpentry, language, fitness, and music, filming hands and tools, showing the practical intimacy of learning by watching. For many people, YouTube became the first place to search when something broke, when curiosity sparked, or when a new skill felt just within reach. You could pause, rewind, slow the video down, and try again, and that alone changed how knowledge moved through the world. The platform also became deeply global. Creators spoke in countless languages, and audiences gathered across borders, discovering accents, humor, and traditions that television rarely offered in such abundance. Subtitles, captions, and translations grew more common, helping a lesson filmed in one country find a student in another. Music traveled too, because a song does not need permission from language to be understood. Over time, YouTube grew into a vast library where culture could be archived in real time, from dance trends to craft techniques, from street interviews to long, thoughtful lectures. In the early 2010s, production values rose, not because everyone became professional, but because the tools became cheaper and expectations quietly shifted. Creators learned lighting, sound, editing, and pacing, and communities formed around sharing tips, as if the platform were teaching people how to make media while they made it. As YouTube became a place for everything, it also became a place for what happens unexpectedly, the moments nobody schedules. A shaky phone video could capture a storm arriving, a street celebration, a speech in a public square, or the quiet aftermath after something important has happened. In earlier eras, you might learn about such moments through a polished news segment, edited and packaged with careful narration. On YouTube, you could sometimes see the raw footage first, with all its imperfections, and those imperfections often felt like proof of reality. During the late 2000s and early 2010s, as smartphones spread and mobile internet improved, more people carry cameras in their pockets than ever before. That changed the texture of public life, because events were no longer only recorded by professionals. They were recorded by bystanders, by participants, by ordinary people whose names you might never know, but whose footage could travel farther than they ever imagined. News organizations began using YouTube not only to publish their own clips, but to find what the public had already filmed. And for viewers, it meant that watching the news could become an active search, a choice to watch different angles, different voices, different interpretations. This openness brought something valuable, a wider window, more perspectives, and a sense that history was being archived in real time. It also brought new challenges because an open door lets in both truth and confusion. So YouTube kept evolving its rules, removing harmful material, limiting some kinds of recommendations, and trying to protect children and vulnerable viewers without closing the door entirely. Live streaming added another layer, letting events unfold in real time with no edit in between, only the steady flow of minutes. Long-form interviews and explainers found a home too, as creators broke down complex topics slowly, with context and calm voiceovers. In a sense, YouTube didn't just distribute the news, it widened the conversation, letting audiences choose not only what happened, but how to understand it. Meanwhile, something else was happening quietly in living rooms. At first, YouTube belonged to desktops and laptops, a private glow in a bedroom or at a kitchen table. But as smart TVs spread and streaming devices made apps feel as ordinary as channels, YouTube began appearing on the biggest screen in the house. That shift changed the posture of watching. You weren't leaning toward a phone anymore. You were leaning back, as if the internet itself had moved into the couch cushions. Creators noticed, and some began making longer videos, episodes rather than clips, with pacing that felt closer to television, only more personal. YouTube leaned into that future too, experimenting with subscriptions, with ad-free viewing, with music services, and eventually with live TV bundles that felt like a bridge for people leaving cable behind. In 2017, YouTube launched YouTube TV in the United States, an attempt to gather familiar networks into a streaming package for viewers who still like the comfort of live channels. But even without any bundle, YouTube itself had already become a kind of new television. It wasn't one station. It was millions of stations, each one shaped by a creator's personality, schedule, and niche, and each one available on demand. For traditional media, this was a slow unfastening. Advertisers followed attention. Young audiences grew up with search and play as their default, and the idea of waiting for prime time began to feel like an old ritual. And yet, the tone of YouTube remained different from television because it could be quieter. A creator could speak softly for an hour about trains, space, cooking, or history, and find an audience who wanted exactly that. So the platform didn't only replace what existed, it expanded what watching could mean, making room for the calm, the niche, the long, and the deeply specific, all living side by side on the same home screen. Of course, when a new way of watching proves itself, other doors open nearby. Instagram, which began as a photo space, leaned harder into video over time, adding short clips, stories, and later reels, as if it could feel the current pulling in that direction. Vine arrived with loops so brief they felt like a blink, and for a while, that 6-second rhythm rewired comedy and timing for a whole generation. Twitch grew into a home for live streams, especially for gaming, where the feeling wasn't watch this, but hang out here. A shared room with chat, moving like a river. And then TikTok rose with its vertical full-screen feed, an endless stream of short videos chosen less by who you follow and more by what the algorithm senses you might enjoy next. Each of these platforms carries YouTube's fingerprint. They all assume that ordinary people will create, that audiences will gather, and that video is not an extra feature, but a central language of modern life. But YouTube has always been shaped a little differently. It is both a feed and a library. You can scroll, yes, but you can also search with intent, find a 10-year-old tutorial, a live concert from another decade, or a quiet lecture you return to like a favorite book. Where TikTok excels at instant discovery, YouTube excels at depth, at building an archive, at holding long-form stories in a place where they can be found again. And as short-form video surged, YouTube responded in its own way. It introduced shorts, bringing vertical, quick creativity into the same ecosystem as documentaries, podcasts, and tutorials. Now, a creator could post a 30-second spark and also a 1-hour deep dive, and both could live under the same channel name. In that blending, you can see YouTube's lasting advantage. It doesn't have to choose one format. It simply keeps widening, making room for whatever kind of story the world wants to tell next. As YouTube grew larger, it also grew more complicated, because a huge open platform is not only a stage, it is a town square. In a town square, people share jokes, music, and helpful advice. In a town square, people also argue, mislead, and sometimes try to profit from harm. So YouTube's history includes not only creativity, but constant adjustment, new rules, new enforcement, and long debates about what should be allowed to stay. Creators felt these shifts deeply. Advertising could appear and disappear with changes in brand sentiment, and whole genres could be nudged up or down depending on what advertisers were comfortable supporting. In the late 2010s, many creators experienced what they called an adpocalypse, when brands pulled back and YouTube tightened monetization standards, leaving some channels suddenly uncertain about income. There were also growing concerns about children's content, about recommendation loops, and about misinformation traveling faster than correction. YouTube responded with new systems, more moderators, more labels, more limits, and a stronger emphasis on removing certain harmful categories. Sometimes those changes felt reassuring, like a city finally installing streetlights. Sometimes they felt blunt, like doors closing without clear explanations. And so the platform became a place where creators learned resilience. They learned to read guidelines, to appeal decisions, to build community trust in ways that didn't depend on ads alone. Viewers learned too, becoming more aware that what you see online is not only what exists, but what is being selected, filtered, and arranged. This is part of YouTube's legacy as well. It taught the world that the freedom to broadcast comes with the responsibility to guide, protect, and correct again and again without ever being finished. And even through the complexity, the quieter truth remained. Most people came for simple reasons: to learn, to laugh, to feel less alone, and to fall asleep with a gentle voice in the background. Another change arrived with almost no announcement. The steady shift from sitting at a computer to carrying the platform in your pocket. Phones improved, networks became faster, and video became something you could watch while waiting for coffee, while commuting, while resting under a blanket. In many countries, YouTube became the first true television for a new kind of audience. People who never grew up with cable, but did grow up with smartphones. Creators in India, Brazil, Indonesia, Nigeria, and countless other places built enormous communities speaking directly to their local culture while also reaching a global audience. YouTube became a bridge between neighborhoods and nations. The same platform could host a village cooking tradition, a city street fashion tour, a university lecture, and a child's first piano recital. To support this shift, YouTube added features that suited mobile life, faster uploads, better compression, captions, and options to download videos for offline viewing in some regions. The platform also learned that time feels different on a phone. Shorter videos can fill small gaps in the day, while long videos can keep someone company during work, exercise, or the slow hours before sleep. And this is where YouTube's dual nature became clear again. It could be quick and casual. It could also be deep and steady, a long conversation, a full documentary, a complete class, a whole evening of gentle watching. As the mobile era expanded, so did the meaning of creator. It wasn't only the person with a fancy camera. It was anyone with a point of view, a skill, a sense of humor, a willingness to show up, and the courage to press upload. In that way, YouTube didn't only change media, it changed participation, turning billions of viewers into potential storytellers and turning the everyday world into something worth documenting. Along the way, YouTube created shared cultural timestamps, moments that felt like everyone was watching the same thing, even if they were watching it alone. One of the clearest was in 2012, when a music video from South Korea, Gangnam Style, became the first YouTube video to reach 1 billion views. 1 billion is such a soft word for such a large number, but the meaning was simple. A joke, a dance, a beat, and a bright, playful visual could travel farther than any radio station because the audience itself was the distribution. That video also showed how YouTube reshaped global culture. A hit no longer needed to come from Hollywood or English language pop to become a worldwide reference point. Around these milestones, new forms emerged. Reaction videos became a kind of communal watching, people filming themselves watching something and inviting you to feel the moment with them. Commentary channels grew, where creators narrated the internet back to itself, reflecting, critiquing, laughing, and sometimes teaching media literacy in the process. Catchphrases formed too. Like and subscribe became a ritual, a gentle little contract between creator and audience, a way of saying, if you enjoyed this, come back. And underneath it all, the platform kept expanding its archive. First video, first billion, most viewed, most liked. each record eventually surpassed, not because the earlier moments were forgotten, but because the crowd kept growing. YouTube made culture feel measurable, countable, as if popularity had a thermometer. But it also made culture feel personal, because even the biggest viral video is watched one person at a time, in one room, on one screen, with one mind reacting quietly in the dark. Then came a season when the world slowed down, and screens became even more central to daily life. During the early 2020s, many people spent more time at home, and YouTube became a companion for work, for learning, for exercise, for cooking, and for those long evenings when silence felt heavy. Creators adapted quickly. Live streams felt like gatherings. Long videos felt like company. Simple uploads, filmed in ordinary rooms, reminded viewers that everyone was trying to make sense of the same strange quiet. In that period, the line between video and audio softened too. People listened to YouTube like radio, leaving a podcast or a lecture playing while doing chores, while driving, while resting. Video podcasts became especially common because seeing a face can make a conversation feel warmer, and because YouTube's search and recommendation tools helped listeners find topics they cared about. For many creators, this reinforced the idea that YouTube is not only about spectacle, it is about routine. A weekly upload, a familiar voice, a consistent format, a gentle promise that something will be there when you return. And for the platform, it was another reminder that it can hold many kinds of attention: quick laughs and deep learning, music and meditation, breaking news and bedtime comfort. In older media, these were separated into channels and categories. On YouTube, they sit side by side, waiting for you to choose what your nervous system needs in that moment. And when the day finally ends and the room goes quiet again, YouTube can feel like a library that never closes, a soft corridor of voices you can walk through until your thoughts settle. As short-form video accelerated, YouTube's newest chapter began to move at a faster tempo. Shorts brought vertical clips into the center of the platform, a format built for phones, for quick bursts of attention, for the tiny gaps in a day. Creators who once focused on 10-minute storytelling began experimenting with 15 seconds. And creators who grew up on short clips began discovering that YouTube could hold longer work too, like a home base beyond the scroll. By the mid-2020s, shorts had become enormous, watched in staggering volume each day, a constant stream of tiny performances, jokes, facts, dances, and moments. YouTube also began adjusting how it counts and measures those views, trying to align with other platforms while still tracking deeper engagement in the background. In this new ecosystem, you can see the pathway YouTube paved for everyone else. TikTok refined the art of instant discovery, serving you what you didn't know you wanted. Instagram blended video into a world of identity and aesthetics, where clips sit alongside photos and stories. Twitch emphasized the live room, the feeling of being present while something unfolds. YouTube, meanwhile, became a place where all of these behaviors can coexist. Scroll when you want quick. Search when you want specific. Stay when you want depth. It is not that one format won. It is that YouTube grew large enough to hold them all. The short spark and the long glow, the clip that vanishes from memory, and the video you return to every year. And as the platform keeps adapting, the same early idea still hums beneath the surface. Upload once. Let the story travel. Now, in the present day, YouTube feels less like a website and more like a layer of the world. It is on phones, televisions, tablets, car dashboards, and in the background of countless routines. It is also increasingly multilingual, with tools that can add captions, translate, and even dub voices across languages, letting a story cross borders with less friction. New creative tools appear as well, from simple editing features to more advanced systems that can generate backgrounds, enhance audio, or help creators work faster. This brings another kind of cultural question, one that feels very modern. When tools make creation easier, the volume of content rises. And when content rises, the value of trust rises too. Viewers begin asking gently, what is real? What is edited? What is staged? What is synthetic? And what is simply a person speaking honestly into a camera? YouTube has to navigate this, balancing openness with clarity, keeping the door open for creativity while trying to reduce deception and harm. Creators navigate it too. They learn that authenticity is not only a feeling, but a practice earned through consistency, transparency, and the quiet respect of an audience over time. And perhaps this is the most lasting imprint YouTube has left on media. It taught us that the future of storytelling is not only about production quality. It is about relationship, about attention, about the human need to share a moment and have someone somewhere receive it. The platform will keep changing, but the impulse it unlocked is steady. The simple desire to say, "Here, look at this," and to feel the warmth of being understood. So when we look back, what changed forever is not only the business of media, though that changed too. What changed was the direction of the camera. For most of the 20th century, cameras pointed outward from institutions, studios, networks, the few speaking to the many. YouTube helped turn the camera around, letting the many speak to the many in millions of small languages, accents, and styles. It turned the ordinary into something shareable. It turned learning into something watchable. It turned niche interests into global communities. It turned fame into something that can begin anywhere, in a bedroom, in a garage, in a quiet corner of the internet, where one person decides to press upload. And it changed the way we remember. Instead of relying only on official archives, we now carry a living record made by everyday people, a mosaic of dinners, dances, protests, tutorials, jokes, and long conversations. Even if you never upload a video yourself, you live in a world reshaped by the idea that you could. That is a subtle kind of freedom. Tonight, As we drift towards sleep, we can feel the calm side of that freedom. A library of voices always there, ready to explain something gently, to play a song, to show a sunset in another country, to remind you that the world is wide and full of ordinary beauty. The screen can dim, the room can soften, and the story of YouTube, from a simple upload button to a new media universe, can fade into quiet. Good night.